Okay, thank you so much for joining everyone. My name is Jess. I'm a cognitive psychologist. I specialize in UX and AI-driven human experience research, which basically means I study and focus on how is our interaction with technology shaping us. And today I have a guest, Dr. Sonia Tiwari. So she's here. And Dr. Tiwari, she's a research fellow with the Falling Walls Foundation. Her work has been presented at Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and at UNICEF. She consults with companies building AI tools that are already in your homes. And she also has built practical frameworks that parents can actually use to evaluate whether or not their kids can use these tools that were built responsibly. So, with that, I just want to start with some icebreakers, Sonia. Let's start with the question you had posed earlier in the backstage of like, what was your last conversation like with an AI chatbot assistant?
Oh, so I actually looked it up because I have so many conversations today. So I'm doing a mentorship at Children's Media Association, and I created like this whole like planning document of I said I'm going to be available on the first Thursdays. Can you list the first Thursdays in the like next 10 months? And this is the learning goal that I have. Can you divide it in those 10 weeks? That kind of conversation and just like planning
Mm,
mentorship. How about you?
yeah, that's a yeah. First, I just want to acknowledge that's a really good way to use it. Like when you have a lot on your mind, it really helps you organize it and prioritize. I know it helps to visually, write it down yourself, but even then, I feel like I still get tangled in like, okay, well, where should my focus be now? So really useful. My last conversation with AI was, we were just talking about this, is although it might appear on the outside that I'm extroverted, I'm actually very introverted and it takes significant charge up time, or I call it power up time to get to this level. So I had it walk through of like, hey, these are the things that I'm nervous about. What kind of exercises can I do to calm down? And deep breathing was one of them. So that was a good recommendation. But yeah, so fun question. Thank you for bringing that in the backstage, Sonia. I want to start and dive in with more about you and let's talk about the origin of your story, your experiences. I know you've dedicated a significant portion of your career to designing AI characters, specifically for video games. And I just wanted to know, like, how did these experiences shape the way that you explain the science behind how kids are attaching or forming emotional attachments to these fictional personalities?
Yeah, so I started my undergrad in film production. And so I was dealing with live action characters in the beginning through screenwriting. I majored in comedy writing. So just looking at I think for comedy, especially when you think about characters, it's the tiny little details about a character that really make them funny. So, for example, like someone who gives like a very specific order at Starbucks, you can really like exaggerate it to make it even funnier. Or,
Yes.
just the way a character, like in animation, even just the way a character walks can tell a lot about their personality. Like, do you have droopy shoulders, or you're like leading with your chest, and all those like physicalities of it, or mannerisms, or backstories that characters bring up. So I've always been fascinated with characters. Then live action kind of felt like it had its limit in terms of imagination. So I was like, okay, I need another medium. And the most open ended medium was animation. So I did my master's in animation. And then I was designing mobile game characters in the gaming industry in the Bay Area for a while. And then after many years, I went back to do my PhD at Penn State in learning design. That's when I started looking at kind of like the other side of characters, that, okay, what is the developmental impact of characters? And how can characters in children's media inspire them to make things in real life? And that whole research was transmedia making, or how media can serve as inspiration for making. And then in around 2021, just the conversations in the Bay Area started shifting more towards AI. And so for me, that was a aha moment that, well, I've studied characters, the design and psychology of characters in general, and now maybe it's time to pivot to AI characters. And so a little bit of luck and a little bit of the ramp that was kind of built up to that moment then helped me pivot to AI characters.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's so much to unpack there. The one thing that stood out to me was like, so you're working with these fictional characters, and this was before AI, but after AI, now these characters can interact with children. Like, what did you notice changed in child psychology or like their behavior with these characters?
I think like so before AI as a character designer or someone who even writes descriptions for characters, there was so much invention involved because characters organically kind of evolve with the things that happen to them. Like we are shaped by our lived experiences. So a
Mm,
person who writes or draws characters is constantly like inventing tiny little details that may or may not add up. So, for example, like there's this worm character in one of the Trolls movies who's very, very small and neon colored, but when it talks, it's like a really big, heavy, manly voice. That's just like a character designer's amazing brain that, oh, it would be so funny if like a big voice comes out of this tiny worm. But what AI was doing was upfront, based on a small prompt, it was inventing this entire persona of the character, which was to me like kind of creatively restricting, because
mm,
we have a whole character design document when we do it traditionally. So to me, it was impressive that it's so fast to create a whole like on character AI. You can go and just like create a simple prompt, like, oh, create a pirate character. And it will go
mm,
after all of the stereotypes based on all public information available, but it
mm,
misses out on the thing that character designers and writers do, which is adding these unexpected, specific spins. And so, like yesterday, I was
mm.
watching an episode of Silicon Valley, and Jared is one of the characters. My favorite character on the show. And there's this tiny detail about him that when he's sleeping, he screams in German, and then when he wakes up and people say, hey, when did you learn German? And he was like, I don't speak German. And they just like left it there. So that's the hanging there. It's such an odd,
It's a
weird.
mystery.
Yeah, but that's what makes the show hilarious. That if you generated a character that, oh, it's a guy from HR, he's really vanilla. He does so, AI will come up with all stereotypical details that, oh, he probably eats, granola for breakfast and he wears beige shirts and all of that. But it nearly won't be as funny or interesting as this random detail. And so my first gut reaction was that the design process itself is flawed because it's aggregating all the stereotypes that are available publicly and creating a collage
Mm,
of it to produce a character, which again, like there have been studies on character AI where um, it's still a valid form of entertainment for many people because it's like I'm a fan of The Simpsons. I did interact with a lot of Simpsons characters on character AI. And because I'm a comedy nerd, I could not relate with those characters because they seemed off. It kind of felt like the
mm.
screenplay or the famous dialogues were fed into the chatbot and it's like merely repeating some of it
Oh,
instead.
okay. So it lost some originality.
Yeah, so for me that was off, but for a lot of people who don't live and breathe characters, it can be pretty convincing, and especially young kids. And I think that's where the concern and the ethics community is genuinely and rightfully concerned that for young
Mm,
kids, there's something called reality status judgment, that is kind of still developing in young children. So they can't very little children cannot judge whether this is a fictional character or it sounds so real,
mm,
especially like I haven't studied this yet and I don't want to, but it is a possible scenario where a parent's voice or appearance can be cloned in a deep fake way. And if a child is presented with
oh,
that, how would a child respond to it? Like it is an important question that I'm even too afraid to do a research around it, but it's so messed up, right? Like, what would it do
I
to a
didn't think
child,
about that.
right? Like,
Yeah.
we had to like
Oh my God.
for people like us, many, like there are many podcasts and a lot of our voices
Mhm.
are out in the public domain. So anyone can clone our voices, call someone we know and pretend to be us. And it's very easy to do these days. Just, 10-15 seconds of audio data is all you need. So for a very young child,
Yeah.
it's difficult. And for older children who are very much aware that, yeah, this is, they can separate fiction from reality. The challenge is that it's kind of like with drugs that, or smoking or alcoholism, it's not good for
Hmm.
you. But in the moment, due to
Hmm.
poor mental health, the capacity to take positive action is challenged. So that's the
Hmm.
anatomy of any kind of addiction, which applies to addiction to
Hmm.
AI characters as well. That even when you're aware this is not real, and if you read the
Yeah.
court transcripts of the suicide cases that have happened because of these chatbots,
Hmm.
these are very intelligent, smart kids, very much aware that this is AI, but that's the anatomy of addiction. Like the conversation patterns are addictive. Knowingly you
Hmm.
get in, before you know it, hours have gone by, and even a well-meaning, supposedly less harmful chatbot over obsessive periods of time can have detrimental effects.
Yeah, that's really scary to consider. Like I'm thinking about like with the I'm thinking about a lot of questions now. Let me see if I can narrow it down. I guess if we had to, right now, we know that like 4 out of 10 children under 12, they're already interacting with AI powered chatbots.
Mhm.
Let's say if we had to have a conversation with them and or their parents, like what should their parents know about having that conversation with their kids of like, hey, if you ever hear my voice say something, I don't know, like go jump off a bridge, like how do you explain to them? Because that's very possible scenario with everything that's out there in Reddit to be transformed like that. How do we have those conversations between a child and a parent to say like, hey, these are some flags to look at?
Right. So I would say, usually, ideally, the companies who make anything that is AI powered, targeted at kids, that they would do a very thorough testing, or that they would have
Hmm.
hired like ethics committees, some child developmental advisors, and thoroughly tested it. This is ideal. It doesn't always
Hmm.
happen. And FERPA and COPA were originally designed for children's media and safety in general. It is introducing clauses about AI, and things are moving, but policy work takes time, and in the pace of innovation and the pace of regulation is not the same. So one thing families can
Hmm.
do is, before handing out a toy to a child, even though the product website or description says that it's child friendly, or or it's like teacher approved, or because there's no one monitoring or approving this line. They can write whatever they want. They can say it's teacher approved, they can say it's psychologist approved. So don't buy
Yeah.
into that just because the creators are saying it. I would say do a red teaming exercise as an adult yourself
Ooh.
before handing it out to your child. Say the worst possible,
Okay.
ask the worst possible questions, see how this
Yeah.
conversation, it goes, and see for yourself, like check for yourself. Your child. Imagine what's the worst thing they might ask, or what's the worst thing that you're afraid of. Have that conversation alone first, and then if
Hmm.
it's a young child, try to be part of the joint engagement experience with the young child. If it's an AI toy, or if it's like even like a tutor bot, maybe have them interact in like a living room type setting where you're around and you're
Hmm.
able to monitor closely. With teens, of course, it's much harder because they have their own personal devices. Joint engagement is not cool. Like, give me my space, mom. Like, you don't expect them to
Yes.
be under
I was
your
about
watch,
to ask you about
right?
that. Like, how would it look like with teens, you know? Like, I know teens will not want to have their moms go through their phone and be like, let's test this out together, honey. Like that's a complete uncool thing that they
Right.
want to
For
do.
that, yeah, again, like
Mhm.
I think it's more about like even valuing, like keeping that line of communication open. That hey, I'm curious, like how was your experience? Like if you're aware that they're talking to some kind of entertainment or tutor type bot, just checking in very openly, frankly, that hey, what did you think? Was it funny? Was it weird? And just creating that non-judgmental space for, it's kind of like, you know, how a fan feels around celebrities. You have to be like around teenagers that hey, can I bring you something, do you want to share something? So you kind of have to have that
Yeah.
gentle open door that oh, I'm a
Uh-huh.
non-judgmental person, you can tell me anything. And so even if they say something like, oh, I think I'm in love with this chatbot, which again, like no one says out loud, but even if you sense something like
Right.
this, instead of like jumping on it right away that how can you or don't you know and look at all the news,
Yeah.
instead it can be more like, you know, let's talk about it, like what made you feel this way, or getting a mental health professional involved, or having like a group conversation. So just trying to create the underlying structure of having an open conversation with teens, that is a very difficult thing to navigate. Says the mom of a teenager who finds it difficult herself. So, you know, like take this with a grain of salt. Like, of course, like I don't have the answers, and anyone who has worked with teens can say this with confidence. No one has a straight up formula or an answer. It is
Yeah.
a developmentally challenging time when, you know, you go from being a little kid to almost being an adult, and you're testing your boundaries and you're practicing your independence, and hormonally things are changing. So
Mhm.
so yeah, a big session of red teaming alone before you hand it out to little kids. For little kids, that joint media engagement. For teens, building a sense of trust and belonging so that they can come and confide in you if they need any kind of
Mhm.
help. And even like noticing like what you know, Mrs. Garcia, who's like such a big advocate for teen safety and AI ethics, and her advice I really love and I follow, that if you see that something feels off, like what is typical for your child, if you see something is
Mhm.
off, that is the time to have a conversation. Because for most kids, including like when I reflect on my own teenage, everyone goes through this phase of being, you know, broody and gritty, and has like some opinion, some mascara flowing, whatever that looked for you. So it is a very awkward phase. So for parents, the challenge is it's hard to assess that, oh, is it just regular teen stuff, or it's something
Mhm.
that I need to, you know, look into closely. And so the advice I've
Yeah.
heard from a lot of parents whose children have suffered because of these parasocial relationships is to kind of keep a close eye on, if something feels off, trust your instinct as a parent and try to have an open conversation. But I will also mention this, that not every child is lucky enough to have a loving parent in the house. This is a reality.
Mhm.
So I, of course,
Yeah.
love appealing to parents and I love appealing to educators, but I also acknowledge that for a lot of kids, the real appeal of these characters is that it's readily available at a time that human support is not available. So it's very easy
Mhm.
for you know, a lot of people like me in the ethics communities say that, well, you know, reach for joint engagement and look for support for your from your parents or friends or teachers. But
Mhm.
it could be like, I went to a girls convent school. My Not all of my teachers were the loving, caring kinds that I could reach out to. And then, you know,
Mhm.
maybe you're a new kid in a new school, you don't have friends yet, or maybe your parents are separated, or even if they're together, they're not functional in that sense. So kids reach
Mhm.
out to these resources because of a reason, and not every reason can be addressed through design, right? So
Mhm.
I would like to help people design the most ethical version of an AI chatbot, but there are bigger systemic problems in the society that force
Yeah.
kids to reach out to unhealthy solutions.
100%. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Sonia, because I was just wondering of like, there is a demographic of children and teens that don't have that sense of belongingness where they have a trusted adult that they can go to for guidance. And in that scenario, I mean, this might be a tough question, but I'll just pose it anyway. In that scenario, like what would you advise if I were a teen in that scenario and I know one person that I've heard in this podcast and I'm like, okay, you're telling me I need to be more careful about my interactions with AI, but I really don't have anyone else to go to. What would I do in that scenario?
I think support groups can be great. The
Hmm.
helpline numbers, I know a lot of like chatbots are kind of trained to that. Oh, if you notice like a pattern of self harm, you just deploy a ton of information that hey, call this left uh,
Hmm.
helpline. I'll be vulnerable and admit that in my early 20s, I was in a dark place. I called one of these helpline numbers, and the back end of it is that it's not mental health professionals who are managing these phone lines. Some of them are social workers, some of
Yeah.
them are just volunteers who were trained very briefly. So they would say things like, you matter, or can you reach out to someone you know, or could you, like, what brings
Hmm.
you joy typically, could you try that activity, just breathe. So not to undervalue that, but a mental health
Hmm.
professional will tell you that that's not sufficient, especially someone who is in
Hmm.
extreme amount of emotional distress. So physically being
Yeah.
around a support system matters in those vulnerable moments. So um, the Alcoholics Anonymous, the same group, also has a support group for children of alcoholic parents. So children
Okay.
of AA. So if you're one of those kids who maybe have alcoholic parents at home, and you are looking for a community and you don't feel like
Hmm.
chatbots or some helplines are doing it for you, then there's a free community for that as well. You can
Yeah.
also, like, reach out to your community college or community center and just enroll in some kind of course that brings you joy, just making those friendships organically, especially if like you've moved into a
Hmm.
new town and you're looking for making friends, finding out some interest driven kind of clubs in school. So I think, like, instead of giving like an umbrella solution, it kind of depends on, right, like what the particular context of the child is. That if they're
Right.
reaching to a chatbot because they're new and don't have friends yet, then there are some
Yeah.
suggestions. If they're doing it because they have maybe abusive parents, then there's another set of solutions. But the
Right.
real is to try to find a trusted adult and ask for support. Yeah. And
Okay.
that person
That's
may not
wonderful
directly
advice.
or yeah, that person may not
Yeah.
be in your home, but it could be like a neighbor you trust, or a friend's parent that you
Hmm.
trust. So um, just acknowledging that, because the assumption in the ethics community is that, oh, just reach out to someone at home, as if like everyone has that person. Yeah.
As if every, yeah, that's so hard. And I think during the pandemic, everyone realized how difficult it was to just stay at home because some people don't have a safe haven in their homes, unfortunately. So
Right.
I really appreciate the call to highlight all the resources that are readily available that are not related to AI. And that highlights the need for that human-to-human interaction, these human experiences that again, this is exactly why I wanted to have this platform is to have that human to human experience. Like we see on the news, oh, this chatbot's causing kids to want to self-harm and unhealthy behaviors. But what's not in the news sometimes is like, well, what are we gonna do about it? You're telling me all the bad news, but what can I do about it? So this is perfect. And
And I think like
just
the
another.
changes
Mhm.
kind of happen at like three different levels. So the most important being just through design, because there's so many fires that can be proactively put out. Just if you design a product thoughtfully. So if anyone who is like designing AI characters, like there's so many nonprofits and consultants and child development people out there. Just search on LinkedIn and you'll find like So many, like it's the new UX design. Like every other person is an
Mm-hmm.
AI ethicist. So find
Yeah.
one of us and have those discussions early and try to address the challenges early on before you unleash this technology on the world and trying to be the first of whatever. Being the first to market, more than that, if you're dealing with a vulnerable population like children and the elderly, it's really important to vet your project thoroughly, your product first before launching it. Then
Mm-hmm.
the second is through policy work, because if it's an ethic, like a former teacher who turned a CEO, they are more likely to consider ethics. But a lot of times we have these CEOs who are MBAs who have worked with all sorts of populations, like they don't specialize in children. So maybe they don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to work with a vulnerable population. So they treat these products like any other product without realizing the potential social harm. So for those types of people who operate businesses like that, regulation is so important, because if you say, "Oh, pretty please, please address ethics," not going to happen. If say that, "Oh, you'll be heavily
Right.
sued," yeah, there
Yep,
will
you
be
gotta deal with the
lawsuits.
money.
Right. So then it's even then,
Yeah.
as we are seeing, a lot of these wealthy CEOs are just paying whatever $1 million fine that they need to, and then continuing to do whatever they were doing. But it's still kind of a win. So we do need more policy level changes. And then the third thing that we are talking about is about the culture. So one is the design, one is the policy, and the third is the culture, like building a culture around using AI. A lot of teachers are doing an
Mm-hmm.
excellent job where they kind of co-design the policies with the students, that, hey, where do you think is a good use of AI, and how about this, how about that. They're having these open conversations with students, so they're building a culture around good use of AI. Similarly, at home we can create a similar culture, that, okay,
Yeah.
when and where are we going to use AI, and when it's not okay, and have a discussion about it, so kids don't feel like, because I said so. They know the reason.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And they
we can
feel
build.
part of the solution.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's also kind of a way of honoring children when we ask for their opinion, so they feel like they have agency in this, and it's not just because their generation is going to inherit the climate cost of this technology and the intellectual cost of this technology,
Yeah.
so they should be part of all these conversations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 100% agree. And on that note, Sonia, so I have one more question before we swap over to like a live demo that you have for us. The one question I have, I'll keep it light so we have plenty of time for the demo, is tell us about Occupy Labs, and also tell us about that necklace because it's the same logo as Occupy Labs and it's so cute.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a 3D printed prototype. I'll hopefully make more. And yeah, it's my son. He's 13 now, but when he was little, he used to say, instead of "okay bye," he was like "okay bye," and that name just
Oh.
kind of stuck with me. So that's the origin of the character. And in yoga, in Buddhism, there's this concept of like loving kindness, and so I always used to draw this like heart with the hands open as a symbol of loving kindness. So that's where it came about. And it started as an expressive arts program, which is like regular arts is just, let's make a painting, let's write a poem, whereas expressive arts is intermodal. So neuroscientifically, when you move from one activity to another following the same theme, for example, like, let's write a journal entry about something that we struggled with. Now let's write a poem about it. Now let's make a collage about it. So when it's intermodal like that, different parts of the brain are activated simultaneously, and so there are like neuroscientific advantages, as well as psychological advantages of expressing yourself, which, again, like in the age of AI, when we are just automating everything, that, oh, generate this
Yep.
image, write this poem for me, we're kind of
Yeah.
bypassing the process, which is joyful. So it was important for me to create a program where people have the ability to slow down, really take their sweet time and writing a poem or making a collage. And so many people who come to these workshops are like,
Mhm.
oh, the last time I wrote a poem was like in middle school or in high school. It's been years
Oh
or
yeah.
right?
Oh my
So
God, speaking about that, like I felt that way too as a grad student. Like we had a course on the psychology of creative writing and we had to write poems. And I remember feeling that. And in the moment, like there's something cathartic about writing poems, and I always feel like cheesy when I do it. But it's so cathartic because it's like I have all these emotions that I want to express that I can't just do it in like normal colloquial language because it doesn't hit right. So I love that you're using different modes of interacting with tapping into one's creativity to get those creative juices flowing and maintain the neural synapses that are happening in our brains when that happens. So
right.
awesome.
Thank you. And then we use AI sometimes thoughtfully to, so the lab part is that, like, how do we use, first of all, do we even need to use AI? So one of the
Mm.
first research studies that I did in one of these workshops with families of children ages 5 to 9, the results were that they were actually like the novelty of AI wore off pretty quickly, and by the end of
Mhm.
those two AI focused workshops, they were like, can we just return to our like regular workshops and just maybe try one tool at the end if we want to, and should be
Oh my
optional.
gosh.
So I was so happy. And this is like, Silicon Valley people, both parents working in tech, even they were like, nah, and enough. So that was
We're over
really
in the, yeah. That's amazing. Okay, we are right at that mark where we can start doing some hands-on. So, Sonia, you have something to share with us today. You want to go ahead and take the screen?
Yes, let me share. So this is an activity that maybe people can try. Let me quickly share. Do you see it full screen?
Yeah, if you could just describe it for anyone that's only having audio today.
Okay. So I did this workshop where typically we would do air dry clay sculptures with kids and families where they would just build a character that is in their imagination. Sometimes it's based on a theme that, create a character that represents your fear, or, create a character in the liking of the person who was the kindest to you this year, something like that. So we ask families to kind of start with sketches and just think about something simple that they can create using air dry clay. Then we spend some
Okay.
time building those things. So in a 90-minute workshops, about 60, 70 minutes is just like free flow sketching and getting your hands dirty, building characters with clay. And then in the last 10, 15 minutes, we ask families to kind of take pictures of the characters from different angles and maybe pose them in the way of a story, or even sketch some ideas around those characters in the form of a story. And we take those images to Google Flow, where you can use the video generation model Veo to animate those photographs, basically. So here's an example of someone who made a clay worm, and they sketched the idea of like the worms walking and getting together in the shape of the word play. So PLAY, four
Hmm.
letters shaped by worms. And so we
Okay.
took in the second sketch, you'll see that under the letter Y, there's a line, and that's a way to indicate that that character is in the foreground and the rest of them are in the background. So AI is able to interpret those kind of directions, that, what is in the foreground, what's in the background, what the character pose is going to be like. And then, yeah, we just put it in Veo, and like, here's the results, a very small video clip. And it's even good at
That
like
is so
taking direct.
cute. That is so cute. And I'm sorry, Sonia. I know you showed this to me before, but like I get a kick out of this every time. So like she just turned those sketches that are formed in the letters PLAY. And then when you put them into Google Flow, they're animated and they now move like little stop motion characters. So just like a visual for anyone that, doesn't have access to alt text in these podcasts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the good thing is that you can even like describe the audio. So for audio, we describe like, oh, they're walking on a crunchy, crispy piece of paper. So that's why you heard like these sounds of the
The
worms,
little
dry leaves type of sound.
That
Yeah.
is so cute and creative too. Like, that you included like, okay, the texture of the paper that they might be worming. We're doing the worm over.
Right. But I will acknowledge though that, see, because I studied animation, I do know. I mean, part of me, in full honesty, I did take a giant student loan and worked hard to pay it off. So I do want to defend animation. So
Yeah.
there's like skill involved in animation as well. So we do a separate workshop that's about stop motion animation where we manually animate everything. And so this is in addition to that. So I, like skipping a skill over completely is kind of not developmentally appropriate. You're kind of depriving children of developing those foundational creative skills. But in addition to doing something hands on, occasionally experimenting with technology can be a more holistic approach instead of saying that, oh, a lot of these child facing AI apps would say something like, let's generate like an image that will turn into a sticker, that will turn into a song, that will turn into a video. And so
Hmm.
the child is literally just out of the picture because it's like everything is
Yeah.
automated. I just
It's
have to
just
sit
like
and
instant
watch.
gratification.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we do this in addition to like if any other animation nerds out there are getting angry that, but yeah, it's an opportunity for kids to love stop motion. I'm like, yeah, we do that too.
Yeah. Okay, we have 4 more minutes, and with those 4 minutes, I do want to unpack this one final question, and that is, if children growing up today with AI became adults in 20 years, what do you hope is different because of the work that people like you are doing in the field?
I mean, I don't think singularly it's gonna make any difference. But
No,
I,
definitely not singularly, but I think it does in like the one child's life that you're helping. Definitely, yes, I do. But like in all the world.
oh, my son will be talking about me in therapy 20 years from now. But I think like just the effort of the ethics community in general, like we are raising all these red flags about that. Hey, make sure it's developmentally appropriate before you like unleash it on the world, and kind of working on those three levels, like I said, at design level, policy level, and culture level. I hope that in 20 years, I think I have hope and faith in young people. They will get over the novelty fast. I think like it's academia who's obsessing over AI a lot more than teens are.
Really?
I know, like, of course, like
I can
they,
see that. I can see
yeah,
that.
like I know that in the media there's like this image of children that they are hanging out, just discussing all things AI and not playing outside or not creating real friendships. But that is not a complete picture. I mean, of course, there are children who are suffering because of technology, but then there are also children who are still outdoors playing, who still value their friendships, who still switch off their phones and take some time off to do regular child
Hmm.
things. So we should balance the narrative that sure it is our job to be watchdogs of big tech, and it is our job to call out the BS whenever we see it, but it's
Hmm.
also our job to appreciate children being children, which is not completely gone. Children still enjoy nature, enjoy being outdoors with friends,
Yeah.
with family. So creating spaces for both. And so for me, that's why from like last year I was consulting full time and just working in big tech fully. And this year that's why I pivoted to like, okay, what is the alternative that we want kids to experience, which is being more hands on. So
Hmm.
one way is to discourage the bad ways, and the other way is to encourage the good ways, and we need both. I think like too many people have joined in because it's more catchy, especially on LinkedIn, right? Like if you're constantly just playing this doomsday scenario that, oh, AI is going to make
Oh
everyone
yeah.
dumb, blah blah blah. So what is the counter to that? The counter to that is, okay, create a more balanced space, then create a place for children to connect so they won't feel lonely and reach out to a chatbot, and create ways for families to come together. So I think, yeah, I would end with that, that in 20 years, I hope the kids of today will have that kind of balanced approach, that they will go beyond the novelty of tech and learn to protect their humanity.
Yeah. That is such an amazing way to close it, Sonia. And for the record, I still feel like you're single-handedly excelling in the field and making it so children are that much safer. So thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for your time today. And thank you everyone in the comments for engaging. Loretta, thank you. And yeah, we'll wrap up. So that was Global Perspectives, episode 1 with Dr. Sonia Tewari. Thank you.
Thank you.